So I decided to do this one because I loved the question and I loved how the chart reflected the question. Um, I'm always saying that when you're interested in how you think something is affecting you astrologically, look at the way that you're describing it because the language has the astrology in it. So, for instance, this person asked, why am I always getting burnt out from jobs? And of course, who has the power to burn you out? The sun. And the sun rules Leo because the sun, of course, is excessively hot and dry. And so we've got this hot and dry sign on the cusp of the midheaven. The other reason that I decided to use this chart is because I think all of you who know me and have worked or are following what I do or have worked with me know that I don't think that the cusp of the 10th house or even the ruler of the 10th house tells us what kind of career we do. I think it tells us what happens to us as we embark on the career and how our public kind of our public persona is affected. And so when he enters the public realm, he gets burnt out. When he enters into his public role, shall we say, he ends up getting burnt out. So, why? I thought we would try to answer the question why, and then also answer the question: is there a career that would help me avoid this pattern? So the main thing that I noticed, okay, we've got a 0 degrees of Scorpio rising. Of course, the Venus is there, and we may get to that in a second. But the main thing that kind of shows up first of all for me is the Mars Uranus thing here in the fourth house. And of course, Uranus is a destabilizer, and Mars is action. So I first of all, that's a destabilizing force, even though we've got fixed signs on the ascendant the and even fixed signs of in the ruler of the ascendant. The conjunction, I'm not really all that big on Uranus, but he's one, like I say, whenever it's a conjunction or an opposition or they're in an angle, then that's when I pay attention to the outer planets, and that is something that's going to make the person extremely restless. Okay, because of course the Mars is the ruler of the first house. The first house is the body, what do they say? Vitae, corpus, inganium. So vitae is life, corpus is body, inganium is talent or inclination. And so the inclination in this chart or from this should be towards a certain type of action. Now, of course, Mars isn't in an air sign, so this person could be highly mentally active. And could have problems. I have Mars in Aquarius, so I can be very mentally active and not act. So there could be either way. It could be going either way that he might be, there might be a burnt out aspect. We haven't gotten to the 10th house things, but just the person themselves, right, is already in this kind of destabilized place with the Uranus or this restless place with the Uranus, right? And then also, like I already said, Mars is action and pushing forward, etc. So we might find that the pace is too slow at some of these jobs, right? Because if Mars is about action and Uranus is speeding things up and making things happen in more erratic ways, then this person could be thinking, oh, um, there's not enough action, there's not enough happening, or yeah, so that might be part of it. But the other thing is this other thing, and they're not going to quite enjoy this part of it as much. Note that the sun, the ruler of the 10th, is in Sagittarius and has just separated from the trine of Jupiter, who's in Aries. That means that the sun, when the sun was applying to Jupiter, the sun was pushing nature onto Jupiter, right? So there was a beautiful reception where the sun, planet A, is in the sign of planet B and applying. But also there is an extra which I would say an extra reception because Jupiter is in Aries, which is the exaltation of the sun. So I think there might be a few things happening. I think, first of all, the pace might not be fast enough, but I also think that this person might have an inflated idea of what it is they're doing or what it is they bring. Now, of course, the sun is in Jupiter sign, and Jupiter enlarges, makes things bigger. And one of its problems is inflation. And one of the problems on the personal level is self inflation. Note that Jupiter is far enough away from the cusp of the seventh house to really not be angular, not in the sign of the seventh either. So he's in the sixth house and retrograde. So he's pretty much a malefic in this chart, despite the, what should we say, the mutual reception between the sun. And then the mutual reception of the sun brings together the second house and the sixth house. And we know that the sixth house, one of the original terms of the sixth house was bad fortune. And the sun becomes a ruler of the sixth house based on his exaltation of Aries. So we know that there's a little bit of misfortune, what should, or maybe there's even a false optimism, right? Because Jupiter is optimistic, but in retrograde, he's going to be wayward. So we've got, and of course, everybody who works with me is going to say, oh, yes, return to virtue, and absolutely. But of course, this is a separating aspect, right, between the sun and Jupiter. So there would indeed have been a return of virtue between the sun and Jupiter. And it would have been a return with fitness, right? But because the sun would have been a little further into the second, and that means that the sun can make things happen. But what we can see is instead of the Jupiter enlarging the career path, right, or bringing the promotion, right? A promotion is an enlargement of sorts, right? It's a and so instead of it bringing the promotion, he's getting burned out. It's making the flames go higher. They're both in fire signs. So instead of somehow there's something going on where, well, it's sixth house. It's the fact that it's the Jupiter is in the sixth and the sun is part ruler. So the sixth house. Now we tend people are like, oh, second, sixth, and tenth. You should be looking at for work. But that I don't agree with that. And of course, the second house is, of course, our substance and money. But the sixth is illnesses and difficulties, bad fortune, servants, animals, things of that nature. So when we're looking at the ruler of the sixth, or this, and also note that Mars rules the first and sixth in this chart. So what they usually say is when a planet rules the first and sixth, or the first and eighth, and only Venus and Mars can do that, that the planet is what is the word? Oh shoot. The planet is the planet is determined towards life. And so that means that Mars, as ruler of the first and sixth, he's not going to be determined towards giving the person illness, but the sun can. The sun can in this chart, or the sun can bring misfortune in this chart, right? Because the sun is the exaltation ruler of the sixth house. So, and then the fact that Jupiter is in it as well, and there's this mutual reception to the tenth of the tenth. It looks like what's happening is Jupiter, like I said, is fanning the flames of discontent instead of promoting what we would expect when we see a sun Jupiter trine, which is, oh, bringing you further into the limelight. Now that could be doing it too, and that could be burning them out, right? So the pressure of being brought into the limelight or being made more public, right? Because that's everything the sun is about public view, display, right? So there could be an aspect of either I'm on display and it's burning me out, or I'm not being displayed enough, right? I'm not visible enough, and or I deserve to be seen more, right? So and another thing that brings this restlessness kind of also into it is the fact that the sun is in Sagittarius, which rules the hips and thighs, right? And so the second part of Sagittarius, or rather, Sagittarius is half man, half horse, and so that's where this idea of the roaming of the Sagittarius and the travel and all of that kind of thing. So that's because of the centaur, because of the horse half. And this is in the horse half. The last 15 degrees of Sagittarius are animal half, are the horse half. So this is in the horse half, and that also brings a restlessness. I should be doing more. I should be doing something more exciting. This isn't exciting enough. Same thing with the same thing. The Mars Uranus is saying I'm so restless. Blah blah blah. The sun is saying this isn't exciting enough. This isn't interesting enough. What's on the other side of the hill? What's in another possible career? Right. That's what he's just said. I'm always getting burnt out for jobs. Is there a career that would help me to avoid this pattern? Well, like I said, the sun is about display. The sun is about visibility. Jupiter is about increase. Are you feeling like your visibility should be increased? Does that create pressure when that happens, or does that create a difficulty when that happens? The other side of it is, um, what was I going to say? Oh, what kind of career that would help avoid this pattern? Now, with this kind of restlessness that I see or that I'm looking at in the chart, and like I said, it's both it's both um mental and it's both mental. Okay, so that's kind of my idea of why I think what's happening is what's happening. I haven't gotten into the Venus and the first and the ascendant, and of course the Venus is applying. Matter of fact, I think it's the only applying aspect. Venus is applying to the. Oh no, the Mercury is also applying. Venus and the Mercury are both applying to Mars. So Venus is applying to this Mars, so the person might have a little bit of charm or mystery, shall we say? But then of course there's also that Saturn that everything is moving away from as well, that Mars and the Venus that is are moving away from. So that and that's even an issue of sorts, or really in the moon that's moving away from the the Mars Venus square, and that might be also part of an issue as well. So what I say is, and of course the Venus, Venus can be indolent, and she's the ruler of the 12th, so that's the self-undoing. So she can be indolent, she can be lazy, she can be, so I don't know, I'm not necessarily saying this person is lazy, but Venus, ruler of the 12th, and this in the so that's going to be issues with relationships and being able to and deal with people, etc. In connection to Mars, that's going to make her sharper. That's going to make the Mars softer, but that's going to make the Venus sharper. So, and then with the moon, then moon is in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, which means it's ruled by the Venus Mars square, and which means that the person might have a little bit of that sharpness in the nature, in how they deal with others, right? Because Venus is our one of the main interpersonal factors, and the fact that Jupiter is in Aries, which is the other part of the square, and Mercury is in Sagittarius, right? That's our speech, and that's our others. So both of the things that represent kind of how we work interpersonally and communicate with others are ruled by the Venus Mars square in this chart, which can make it a, kind of an exciting, sexually interesting type of person, but it can make the expression in this chart a little bit sharper than necessary. So they can might be go back and forth between being quite charming and being a little bit blunter. Mars in Aquarius is like I said, I have this. I know how blunt it can be. Um, so the words can be like it can be like knives. As a matter of fact, I remember a friend of mine used to say, "Ooh, knives, Antoine." So, what kind of work? So the sun represents mountains and the deep forest, and with the stuff in Sagittarius and with Mars, with the Uranus, I think this person should be outside and should be in the forest. I think this person should be looking at being a forest ranger or doing something where they're walking, moving, out, land surveying, right? Because we've got Mars in the fourth house here, so the fourth house is stuff above and under the ground. So yeah, I would. That's I don't know. When I looked at this chart, I thought, and also where they can maybe be their own boss. I think there definitely are power struggles in this chart. And Scorpio is rising naturally, and then the Venus Saturn square. There's authoritarian issues in this chart, and this person wants to be seen as an authority, in my opinion, but might not want the responsibility of it. So, what I say is something where you can roam free, something, hell, even a fucking flight attendant might not. Yeah, Moon is the ruler of the ninth in this chart, so that's long distance travel. I think something that has to do more with roaming around and like I said, walking around, driving around, flying from place to place. I think things where you are going to go be somewhere different every day. Some different situation is going to happen every day that you have to deal with. Event planning, even, but that's like the low end of it, because event planning, there's always some bullshit that comes up, and you have to kind of put out a fire, right? You have to put out a fire. So if we continue with the fire imagery, then the fire, even a fireman, why not? Why not use the fire imagery to be a fireman? And then you don't get burned out. You deal with the things that do. All right. So that's what I think I have to say about that.